title, The Pirate's Curse, Part 1. It was a dark, stormy night at sea. The wind howled, and the waves crashed against a ship called the Stormbreaker. This wasn't just any ship. It belonged to the most feared pirate in the world, Captain Blacktooth. He was known for his cruel ways and his desire to find the greatest treasure ever hidden, the curse of the Crimson Isle. It was said that whoever found it would have all the gold in the world, but would also be cursed forever. Captain Blacktooth stood at the front of the ship, his long black coat blowing in the wind. He had a big scar across his face and a golden tooth that shined when he smiled, which wasn't often. He was on a mission to find the treasure, no matter the cost. On board the ship was a young man named Tom, who wasn't like the other pirates. Tom didn't choose this life. He was taken by Captain Blacktooth when he was just a boy. Now, at 25, he had learned the ways of the sea, but deep inside, he wanted something more. He wanted freedom. Tom spent most days cleaning the ship and following orders, but he knew that something big was coming. One night, while the crew was drinking and laughing, Tom overheard Captain Blacktooth talking about the Crimson Isle. "The treasure is near," Blacktooth said with a wicked grin. "But it's guarded by something far worse than any man." Tom felt a chill. He knew the captain wasn't scared of anything, so what could be worse than a man? The next morning, the crew prepared for battle. The sea was rough, and the skies were dark. They were getting closer to the Crimson Isle, a place no one had ever returned from. The island was surrounded by dangerous rocks and huge waves, and it was said to be cursed by old magic. But Captain Blacktooth didn't care. He wanted the treasure. As they got closer, the crew saw something in the water, a shipwreck. Pieces of broken ships floated around them, and old, tattered flags waved in the wind. There were no survivors. Suddenly, the ship hit something hard, a rock hidden beneath the waves. The crew struggled to keep the ship from sinking, but Captain Blacktooth shouted, "We keep going! The treasure is just ahead!" The ship finally made it to the shore of the island, but the crew was tired and scared. The island was dark and covered in fog. Strange noises echoed from the trees. "We need to be careful," Tom whispered to himself as he stepped off the ship. As they walked deeper into the island, they saw old skeletons lying on the ground, still holding their swords. It looked like there had been a battle a long time ago. The crew grew nervous, but Blacktooth was determined. "We're close," he said, holding a map with shaky hands. "The treasure is in the cave." The cave was deep inside the island, hidden behind thick trees and vines. Tom's heart was pounding. He had heard the stories about the curse, but he never believed them, until now. As they reached the cave entrance, a strange sound filled the air, a loud, low growl. "What was that?" one of the pirates asked, his voice shaking. Before anyone could answer, a giant creature appeared from the shadows of the cave. It had red eyes, sharp teeth, and looked like it hadn't eaten in years. The crew screamed and tried to run, but the creature was fast. It grabbed one of the pirates and pulled him into the darkness. Tom froze. He had never seen anything like it. Captain Blacktooth, however, didn't move an inch. He pulled out his sword and walked toward the cave. "We have to fight," he shouted. A fierce battle began. The crew fought the creature with all their strength, but it was strong and quick. Tom grabbed a sword and tried to help, but he was too scared. The creature knocked him to the ground, and for a moment, Tom thought it was the end. But just as the creature lunged at him, Captain Blacktooth jumped in front and stabbed it in the heart. The creature let out a horrible scream and fell to the ground. The crew stood in silence, shocked by what had just happened. Blacktooth smiled his wicked smile. The treasure is ours now. But Tom wasn't so sure. The island still felt wrong, like something else was watching them. They entered the cave, and inside there was a large stone chest covered in gold. Captain Blacktooth's eyes lit up with greed. He ran to the chest and opened it, revealing mountains of gold coins, jewels, and shining swords. "We're rich!" the crew shouted. But their joy didn't last long. Suddenly, the cave started to shake. The walls began to crack, and a deep voice echoed through the cave. "You have taken what is not yours," the voice boomed. "Now, you will pay." The treasure was cursed. The gold began to melt, and the jewels turned to dust. The crew tried to escape, but the cave entrance was blocked by falling rocks. Tom ran for his life, dodging falling stones and trying to find a way out. Captain Blacktooth, still holding on to the gold, refused to leave. He was obsessed with the treasure, even though it was destroying everything around him. "We can't stay here," Tom shouted, grabbing the captain by the arm. But it was too late. The cave collapsed, burying Captain Blacktooth and his cursed treasure forever. Tom barely made it out alive, running through the jungle until he reached the shore. The crew was gone, the treasure lost, but Tom was free. He looked out at the sea, knowing his life had changed forever. He had faced the curse of the Crimson Isle and lived to tell the tale. Now, with the captain gone, Tom was no longer a prisoner. He could finally live the life he had always wanted, a life of freedom and adventure. But as he sailed away from the island on a small boat, he couldn't help but wonder, was the curse really over? Or would it follow him across the seas? The Pirate's Curse, Part 2. Tom thought he was free as he sailed away from the cursed island. The small boat rocked gently on the waves as he left the Crimson Isle far behind. He stared at the horizon, trying to calm the storm inside his heart. But no matter how hard he tried, the memories of the cave, the treasure, and the monstrous creature haunted him. Days passed, and Tom began to run low on supplies. The sun beat down on him, and the endless sea stretched out in all directions. He had no map, no plan, just the desire to get as far away from the curse as possible. One evening, just as the sun was setting, something strange happened. The water around his boat began to ripple. At first, Tom thought it was just the wind, but then the ripples grew stronger. Suddenly, the boat shook violently, as if something huge was moving beneath it. Tom's heart raced. He peered over the side of the boat, but the water was too dark to see anything. Then, with a massive splash, a giant tentacle shot out of the water and wrapped around the boat. Tom grabbed his sword, but the boat was being pulled down fast. The tentacle squeezed tighter, and the boat started to crack. Before Tom could react, the boat was flipped upside down, and he was thrown into the sea. He tried to swim, but the current was too strong. The creature, a massive sea monster, rose from the depths, its many eyes glowing in the darkness. Just when Tom thought he was about to be swallowed whole, a bright light appeared on the horizon. A ship was approaching fast, its sails glowing like fire in the night. The monster hesitated, as if afraid of the light, and then vanished back into the deep. Tom was pulled out of the water by strong arms and dragged onto the deck of the ship. coughing and gasping for air, he looked up to see a woman standing over him. She had long, dark hair, piercing blue eyes, and a commanding presence. She wasn't dressed like any pirate he had seen before. Her clothes were finer, and she wore a jeweled sword at her side. "Who are you?" Tom asked, still breathless. The woman smiled slightly. "My name is Captain Isabella. You're lucky we found you. That beast doesn't usually let its prey escape." Tom sat up, looking around. The ship was unlike any pirate ship he had been on. It was sleek, fast, and the crew looked more disciplined than Blacktooth's men. "What was that thing?" Tom asked, shivering at the memory of the monster. "The Kraken," Isabella said simply. "It guards these waters. No ship passes without its notice." As the ship sailed on, Tom began to understand that Isabella's crew was not just any group of pirates. They were part of a secret organization called the Ghost Fleet, a legendary group of pirates who were more than just treasure hunters. They protected the seas from ancient curses, dangerous creatures, and the dark magic that many thought were just myths. "We've been hunting the Crimson Isle for years," Isabella explained later that night as they sat together under the stars. Captain Blacktooth wasn't the first to seek its treasure, but he was the most reckless. The curse has claimed many lives, but it's far from over. There's more to that island than gold. Tom listened carefully, realizing that the danger he had escaped was much bigger than he thought. "What do you mean the curse isn't over?" "Blacktooth is dead. The treasure's buried." Isabella shook her head. "The treasure was just a piece of it. The real curse is tied to something older, something that can't be buried. The sea itself holds the secret." Suddenly, the ship's bell rang out, signaling trouble. The crew rushed to their stations as a thick fog began to roll in, surrounding the ship. Out of the mist, ghostly shapes began to appear, old, broken ships with tattered sails and skeletons at the helm. The Ghost Armada. "These are the souls of the men who've tried to claim the treasure," Isabella said, drawing her sword. "They're cursed to sail the seas forever, hunting anyone who dares challenge the Crimson Isle." Tom grabbed a sword from the ship's armory, his heart pounding. The ghost ships closed in, and the air was filled with the sound of clashing metal as the undead crew of the Ghost Armada boarded Isabella's ship. The battle was fierce. The ghostly pirates were faster and stronger than any Tom had faced before. Their swords passed through flesh like smoke, but they couldn't be killed. Every time one was knocked down, they would rise again, their hollow eyes glowing with hatred. Tom fought alongside Isabella, but it seemed hopeless. The ghosts were endless, and the ship was being torn apart. "We can't fight them all," Tom shouted, his sword arm growing tired. "We don't have to," Isabella replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. "Look!" In the distance, a bright light began to grow, the light of dawn. As the first rays of the sun touched the ghost ships, they began to fade. The ghosts screamed in agony as their bodies turned to mist, and soon the Ghost Armada was no more. Tom collapsed on the deck, exhausted but alive. The battle was over, for now. As the sun rose, Isabella approached Tom with a serious look on her face. "You've survived 2 encounters with the curse," she said. "That means the sea has chosen you." "Chosen me for what?" Tom asked, confused. "To find the heart of the sea," she replied. "It's the source of all the magic in these waters, the key to breaking the curse. But it's also the most dangerous thing you'll ever face. If we don't find it first, the curse will spread, and the seas will never be safe again." Tom felt a chill. He had escaped the Crimson Isle, fought the Kraken, and survived the Ghost Armada, but now it seemed his adventure was only just beginning. With Captain Isabella and the Ghost Fleet, Tom embarked on a new quest, one that would take him to the farthest corners of the sea, through storms, shipwrecks, and battles with creatures of legend. But nothing could prepare him for what lay ahead, an enemy far more dangerous than Blacktooth, a force that controlled the sea itself. The curse was growing stronger, and time was running out. The Pirate's Curse, Part 3. As Tom and Captain Isabella sailed onward with the Ghost Fleet, their journey took them to the mysterious Isles of Siren Song. These islands were rumored to be inhabited by beautiful sirens, magical creatures who lured sailors to their doom. Though the sea was calm, the crew remained on high alert, knowing the dangers that lurked ahead. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the moonlight glistened over the water, the crew heard soft, sweet singing drifting over the waves. Tom leaned against the railing, listening. The song was so enchanting, so soothing, that it felt like a dream. His eyes grew heavy, and he felt an overwhelming urge to follow the voice. Suddenly, Isabella grabbed his arm, snapping him out of his trance. "Snap out of it, Tom!" she shouted, her voice cutting through the song. "The sirens are trying to pull you into the water." Tom blinked and shook his head, realizing how close he had come to falling overboard. He looked at Isabella, her blue eyes fierce and determined. "Thanks," he said breathlessly. "That was close." Isabella smirked. "You owe me one." She gave him a playful wink, and for a moment Tom's heart skipped a beat. There was something about her, strong, fearless, and beautiful. He quickly shook the thought away, knowing there was no time for romance on a dangerous quest. But as they sailed further, the tension between Tom and Isabella grew. She was the captain, always in control, and yet, every time Tom looked at her, he couldn't help but feel drawn to her. He tried to focus on the mission, but his thoughts kept drifting to her. Her graceful movements, her confident smile, and the way her hair glowed in the moonlight. Later that night, after the crew had settled down and the sea was quiet, Tom found himself alone with Isabella on the deck. They stood side by side, gazing out at the horizon. There was a comfortable silence between them, the kind that didn't need words. "You're not like the other pirates I've met," Tom said, breaking the silence. Isabella raised an eyebrow, amused. "And how many pirates have you met?" "Enough to know they don't usually save people," Tom replied with a grin. Isabella laughed softly. "I'm not just a pirate," she said, her voice suddenly more serious. "I was born into a noble family, but I chose this life. The sea is in my blood. It's where I belong." Tom looked at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. "I didn't expect that," he said, "but it makes sense. You're not like anyone I've ever met." For a moment, their eyes met, and Tom felt his pulse quicken. There was a tension in the air, something electric and unspoken. He wanted to reach out, to kiss her, but before he could act on the impulse, the ship jolted violently, throwing them both off balance. "Captain, we're under attack," shouted one of the crew members from the crow's nest. Tom and Isabella rushed to the side of the ship. In the distance, another pirate ship was speeding toward them, its black sails billowing in the wind. It was the Black Serpent, a feared ship led by a pirate known as Captain Marlowe, notorious for raiding and sinking any ship that crossed his path. "Ready the cannons," Isabella ordered, her commanding voice echoing across the deck. Tom grabbed a sword and joined the crew, preparing for battle. The Black Serpent drew closer, and within moments, cannon fire filled the air. The ship rocked as explosions hit the water around them, and soon the two ships were side by side, their crews clashing in fierce combat. The battle was chaotic. Tom swung his sword, parrying blows and fending off attackers. He noticed Captain Marlowe, a tall, dark-haired man with a sinister grin, watching from the other ship. Marlowe's eyes narrowed when he saw Isabella, and he called out, "Well, well, if it isn't the infamous Captain Isabella, I've been looking forward to this." Isabella stepped forward, sword in hand, her eyes blazing with fury. "You picked the wrong fight, Marlowe." With a swift motion, she leaped across the gap between the two ships and engaged Marlowe in a deadly duel. Their swords clashed with sparks, and the sound of metal filled the night air. Tom couldn't help but admire her skill, the way she moved with grace and power. But as the battle raged on, Marlowe's crew began to overwhelm them. The Ghost Fleet was outnumbered, and it seemed like all hope was lost. Just as Marlowe was about to strike a fatal blow at Isabella, Tom intervened, blocking the attack with his own sword. "You," Marlowe sneered. "You think you can stop me?" Tom grinned. "No, but I can sure try." The fight between the three of them was intense. Marlowe was fast and brutal, but Tom and Isabella fought together as a perfect team. At one point, their eyes met during the battle, and Tom couldn't resist a smirk. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" Isabella asked, slightly out of breath. "A little bit," Tom replied with a wink. With a final, powerful strike, Isabella disarmed Marlowe and held her sword to his throat. "This ends now," she said coldly. But before she could deliver the final blow, Marlowe threw a smoke bomb at their feet, disappearing in the chaos. When the smoke cleared, he was gone, along with his ship. The battle was over, and the crew began to repair the damage to the ship. As they worked, Tom and Isabella found themselves alone again, standing at the bow of the ship. This time, the tension between them was undeniable. "You saved my life back there," Isabella said softly. Tom shrugged. "You've saved mine a few times. I guess we're even now." Isabella looked at him, her expression unreadable. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, her hand resting on his chest. "Maybe we're not even yet," she said with a sly smile. Before Tom could reply, Isabella leaned in and kissed him. It was brief but intense, a moment of passion in the middle of their dangerous journey. When she pulled away, Tom was left speechless, his heart racing. "Don't get too comfortable, sailor," Isabella teased. "We still have a curse to break." Tom laughed, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. "Wouldn't dream of it, Captain." The next morning, the Ghost Fleet continued their journey, but Tom couldn't stop thinking about the kiss. He tried to focus on the mission, but every glance from Isabella sent his heart racing. The crew, oblivious to their growing attraction, joked and laughed as they sailed toward their next destination, the Devil's Triangle, a place known for shipwrecks, storms, and death. But there was no turning back now. The curse was getting stronger, and the heart of the sea was still out there, waiting to be found. As they sailed into the triangle, the skies darkened and the sea grew rough. Lightning crackled in the distance, and the crew grew tense. Suddenly, a massive whirlpool appeared in the distance, pulling everything toward its center. The Ghost Fleet struggled to steer away, but the current was too strong. Tom gripped the railing, his heart pounding. "This is it," Isabella shouted over the roaring wind. "The heart of the sea is down there at the center of the whirlpool." Tom's eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you crazy? We'll be ripped apart." Isabella smiled, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "I never said it would be easy." And with that, the ship was pulled into the whirlpool, spiraling down into the depths of the sea. The Pirate's Curse, Part 4. The Ghost Fleet plunged into the whirlpool, the ship spinning faster and faster as the storm raged around them. The crew held on for dear life, their faces pale with fear. But through it all, Captain Isabella stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the swirling water below. Tom couldn't help but admire her courage, even though he was terrified. As they were pulled deeper into the whirlpool, the ship suddenly lurched, and everything went black. When Tom awoke, he found himself lying on a sandy shore. The sky above was clear, and the air was warm. He groaned, pushing himself up to a sitting position. His head ached, and his clothes were soaked from the sea. He looked around and saw that the rest of the crew had washed up on the beach as well. "Is everyone alive?" he called out, his voice rough. Isabella appeared beside him, her clothes tattered, but her spirit unbroken. We're alive, she said, shaking the water from her hair. Barely. Tom looked around, confused. Where are we? The center of the whirlpool, Isabella replied, her eyes scanning the strange island they had landed on. This must be the place where the heart of the sea is hidden. The island was unlike anything Tom had ever seen. The trees were enormous, with leaves that glowed faintly in the dim light. Strange animals moved through the underbrush, their eyes glowing in the shadows. The island felt alive, almost as if it were watching them. Well, this is cozy, Tom muttered sarcastically, brushing sand off his clothes. He glanced over at Isabella and grinned. I'm starting to think you just enjoy putting us in dangerous situations. Isabella laughed, her blue eyes sparkling with amusement. Where's the fun in being safe, Tom? Tom chuckled, feeling a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. Despite the danger, there was something thrilling about being on this island with Isabella. The way her hair glowed in the soft light, the way she moved with such confidence. It was hard to focus on the mission when she was around. All right, crew, Isabella said, snapping him out of his thoughts. We need to find the heart of the sea. Stay close, and don't trust anything on this island. It's filled with traps and magic. Tom smirked as he followed Isabella through the jungle. Traps and magic? Sounds like a typical day for us. As they ventured deeper into the jungle, the atmosphere grew more tense. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, whispers, laughter, and the rustle of unseen creatures. At one point, Tom swore he saw something move out of the corner of his eye, but when he turned to look, it was gone. Are you sure this is a good idea? Tom asked, his voice low. Isabella flashed him a teasing smile. If you're scared, you can hold my hand. Tom grinned, his heart racing. I'll hold you to that offer. After hours of trekking through the dense jungle, they reached the entrance to an ancient temple. The temple was covered in vines, and strange symbols were carved into the stone. Isabella approached the entrance, her eyes narrowing as she studied the carvings. This is it, she whispered. The heart of the sea is inside. Tom stepped forward, eyeing the dark passageway leading into the temple. You know, this feels like one of those traps you were talking about. Isabella glanced at him with a mischievous smile. What's the matter, Tom? Afraid of the dark? Tom rolled his eyes, trying to hide his nerves. No, just making sure we don't end up cursed. Again. Isabella chuckled and stepped into the temple, with Tom and the crew following closely behind. Inside, the air was cool and damp, and their footsteps echoed off the stone walls. The deeper they went, the more they could feel the ancient magic of the place. It was almost like the walls were alive, pulsing with energy. Suddenly, they came to a large chamber. In the center of the room, floating in midair, was a glowing blue gem, the heart of the sea. There it is, Isabella whispered, her eyes wide with awe. Tom's jaw dropped. That's incredible. But as they approached the gem, the ground beneath them began to rumble. The walls shook, and the ceiling started to crack. Without warning, a massive stone door slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside the chamber. I knew it, Tom exclaimed, his heart pounding. It's a trap. The ground split open, and from the cracks emerged skeletal warriors, their hollow eyes glowing with an eerie blue light. They were the guardians of the heart of the sea, bound by magic to protect it at all costs. Well, this just keeps getting better and better, Tom muttered, drawing his sword. Isabella smiled, her eyes gleaming with excitement. I hope you're ready for a fight. The battle was intense. Tom and Isabella fought side by side, slashing and dodging the skeletal warriors' attacks. Despite their bony appearance, the warriors were fast and deadly. Tom barely had time to think as he parried a blow from one of them, the force of the strike sending him stumbling back. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Tom called out to Isabella as they fought. Isabella grinned, dodging a blow and slashing at another warrior. What can I say? I love a good challenge. In the midst of the chaos, one of the skeletons lunged at Tom, knocking him to the ground. He struggled to push it off, but its bony hands wrapped around his throat, choking him. Just when he thought he was done for, Isabella appeared, slicing the skeleton's head off with a swift motion. She reached down and pulled Tom to his feet, her face inches from his. Don't die on me now, sailor, she teased, her voice low and breathless. Tom grinned, his heart racing. I'm not going anywhere. There was a brief moment of silence between them, the chaos of the battle fading into the background. Without thinking, Tom leaned in and kissed her. It was quick, but filled with all the tension that had been building between them. When they pulled apart, Isabella gave him a playful smile. Now we're even, she said with a wink, before turning and diving back into the fight. Tom couldn't help but laugh, his nerves gone as he followed her lead. After what felt like hours, they finally defeated the last of the skeletons. The chamber was silent once more, and the glowing gem floated above them, untouched. We did it, Tom said, breathing heavily. We actually did it. Isabella approached the gem, her hand hovering over it. The heart of the sea, she whispered, the power to break any curse. But just as she reached out to grab it, the ground shook again. This time, it wasn't skeletons that emerged. It was a massive sea monster, its tentacles writhing as it rose from the ground, its eyes glowing with ancient magic. Oh, come on, Tom groaned, raising his sword. Can't we get a break for once? Isabella smirked. Where's the fun in that? The sea monster roared, its voice echoing through the temple, and the battle began once again. The Pirate's Curse, Part 5. The ground shook beneath their feet as the massive sea monster emerged from the temple floor, its slimy tentacles thrashing wildly in the air. The glowing blue eyes of the creature fixated on Tom and Isabella, filled with ancient fury. Water began flooding the chamber, rising quickly around their ankles. Tom gripped his sword, his knuckles white with tension. What is that thing? He shouted over the roar of the monster and rushing water. Isabella didn't look scared, though her face was serious. A guardian of the heart. This is no ordinary treasure, Tom. It's been protected by magic for centuries, and now we've triggered the final defense. Tom blinked, not sure whether to laugh or panic. You didn't mention the part about fighting a giant sea monster. Isabella flashed a grin at him, her eyes gleaming with excitement. I didn't want to scare you off. Before Tom could reply, the monster lunged, its tentacles whipping toward them with terrifying speed. Tom ducked just in time, the slimy appendage slamming into the wall where he had been standing moments before, cracking the stone. Move! Isabella yelled, grabbing his arm and pulling him to the side, just as another tentacle came crashing down. The crew scattered, trying to avoid the monster's attacks as it lashed out, causing debris to fall from the ceiling. The water was now up to their knees, and Tom could feel the current growing stronger, threatening to pull them under. "Is there any plan for getting out of this alive?" Tom shouted, dodging another tentacle swipe. Isabella looked up at the floating heart of the sea, still glowing brightly in the center of the chamber. "We need to grab the heart. It's the only thing that can stop this." Easier said than done, Tom thought, as he glanced at the massive creature blocking their way. He turned to the rest of the crew, who were desperately trying to fight off the monster's attacks with swords and pistols. "Keep it distracted," he yelled. "We'll get the heart." Isabella nodded, already climbing the temple stairs toward the glowing gem. Tom followed close behind, his heart pounding in his chest. The monster seemed to sense what they were doing, because it roared and sent two of its tentacles crashing toward them. "Run faster," Isabella shouted, laughing despite the danger. Tom couldn't help but grin, feeling the rush of adrenaline as they dodged the tentacles and raced up the steps. The water continued to rise, now splashing against their legs, but they were getting closer to the heart. Just as they reached the platform where the heart floated, the sea monster reared back, preparing for a final attack. Its tentacles shot forward, aiming straight for Tom and Isabella. In that split second, Tom grabbed Isabella's arm and pulled her close, their faces inches apart. "This better work," he muttered, before leaping toward the heart. His hand closed around the glowing gem, and for a moment, everything went still. A blinding light filled the chamber, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. The monster let out an earth-shaking roar, its tentacles flailing wildly as the magic of the heart surged through the air. The water stopped rising, and the air crackled with energy. Tom held the heart tightly in his hand, feeling its power coursing through him. It was unlike anything he had ever felt before. The creature let out one last cry of fury before dissolving into a cloud of mist, its form disintegrating as the magic unraveled. When the light finally faded, the temple was quiet again. The water had receded, and the only sound was the crew's heavy breathing. "We did it," Isabella whispered, staring in awe at the now still chamber. Tom let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding and looked down at the glowing heart in his hand. "That was intense." Isabella turned to him, her face lighting up with relief and excitement. "You were amazing, Tom." Before he could reply, she leaned in and kissed him. This time the kiss was slower, more deliberate, and Tom felt his heart skip a beat. When they pulled apart, Isabella smiled at him, her face flushed. "For luck," she said playfully, brushing her hair out of her face. Tom grinned, still a little breathless. "I could get used to this." But before they could celebrate, a deep voice echoed through the chamber. "Well, well, well, I never thought you'd make it this far." Tom and Isabella spun around to see a figure stepping out of the shadows. It was a man, tall, with long dark hair and a menacing grin. He wore the tattered coat of a pirate captain, and his eyes glinted with malice. "Who are you?" Tom demanded, tightening his grip on the heart. The man chuckled, stepping forward until the dim light revealed his face. His skin was pale, almost ghostly, and his eyes were hollow like two black pits. He looked like someone who had been brought back from the dead. "My name is Captain Black," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "And that, my friends, belongs to me." Isabella's eyes narrowed. "The heart of the sea belongs to no one. It's a powerful artifact, and it should stay hidden." Captain Black's smile widened, showing his yellowed teeth. "Oh, but you see, I need it to lift my curse, and I'm not leaving without it." Tom glanced at Isabella, then back at Captain Black. "We're not just going to hand it over." Captain Black's expression darkened. "Then you leave me no choice." He snapped his fingers, and suddenly from the shadows, more ghostly figures emerged. Pirates like Captain Black, their faces twisted with malice. They moved silently, their weapons drawn. "Ghost pirates," Tom muttered, shaking his head. "Of course." Isabella raised her sword, her eyes fixed on Captain Black. "We can't fight them, Tom. They're already dead." "Then what do we do?" Tom asked, feeling the weight of the heart in his hand. Isabella looked at him, her expression serious. "We run." Tom blinked. "Run? Where?" Isabella grabbed his hand and started pulling him toward the exit. "Anywhere but here." The chase was on. Tom and Isabella ran through the winding temple corridors, the ghostly pirates hot on their heels. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the stone walls, and Tom could feel the cold air of the spirits closing in on them. "This is insane," Tom yelled as they sprinted down another hallway. "Welcome to my life," Isabella shouted back, her laughter mixing with the sound of danger. They burst out of the temple and into the jungle, the eerie glow of the island casting long shadows. Behind them, the ghost pirates followed, their eyes glowing in the darkness. Tom glanced back, his heart racing. "We can't keep running forever." Isabella smiled as they reached the beach. "Don't worry, I've got a plan." She whistled loudly, and out of the mist, a small boat appeared, crewed by none other than Captain Jack, the roguish pirate from their earlier adventures. "Took you long enough," Jack called out, waving them over. "We had some company," Isabella replied, laughing as they jumped into the boat. As the boat pulled away from the shore, the ghost pirates reached the edge of the island, but they couldn't follow. They stood there, staring after them, their hollow eyes filled with rage. Tom collapsed onto the deck, breathing heavily. "I'm starting to think I'm not cut out for this pirate life." Isabella sat beside him, a smirk on her lips. "You're doing just fine." The Pirate's Curse, Part 6. As the small boat sailed away from the island, the crew found themselves basking in a brief moment of peace. The moonlight shimmered on the water, casting a serene glow over the sea. Tom leaned back, still catching his breath, while Isabella stared out into the horizon, her mind racing with thoughts about the heart of the sea. But Tom wasn't one to enjoy the quiet for long. He looked at Isabella, still holding the glowing heart. "So, what now? We just keep running? Captain Black and his ghost crew won't stop until they have this." Isabella's lips curled into a teasing smile. "Well, running was fun, wasn't it? Or are you getting tired already?" Tom chuckled, brushing his wet hair back. "Maybe a little. But I was hoping for a few less sea monsters and curses and maybe more normal pirate stuff. You know, gold, rum, that kind of thing." Isabella raised an eyebrow and leaned in closer. "Normal pirate stuff, huh? You're in the wrong business, Tom. There's nothing normal about being a pirate." Her playful flirtation didn't go unnoticed. Tom grinned, enjoying the moment. "I think I've figured that out by now, but I'm not complaining." Before the banter could go any further, Captain Jack's voice interrupted. "You two lovebirds can flirt later. We've got bigger problems." Jack stood at the helm, one hand on the wheel and the other holding a bottle of rum. "There's a storm coming, and it looks like we've got company." Tom and Isabella stood up and peered into the distance. Sure enough, black clouds were rolling in fast, and beneath the ominous sky, the shadow of a ship appeared on the horizon. The flag it flew was unmistakable, a black skull with glowing eyes. "Captain Black's ship," Isabella whispered. Her face grew serious again. "They found us already?" Tom asked, feeling the weight of the heart growing heavier in his hand. "They don't need to find us," Jack replied, his tone grim. "They're cursed. They can track the heart of the sea wherever it goes." "We need to get rid of them," Isabella said, her mind working quickly. "If we can destroy the heart, it'll break the curse and Black and his crew will vanish." Tom frowned, looking down at the gem. "Destroy it? Isn't this supposed to be the treasure of a lifetime?" "Treasure or not," Jack interrupted, "it's not worth our lives. The longer we have it, the more danger we're in." Tom was conflicted. He had risked everything to get the heart, but now it was turning into a curse of its own. Before he could respond, a flash of lightning lit up the sky, followed by a loud crack of thunder. The storm was here. Winds howled, and the waves grew larger, crashing against the boat as they struggled to keep it steady. Jack barked orders to the crew, who scrambled to adjust the sails. But Tom couldn't take his eyes off the approaching ship. It was moving faster than seemed possible, closing the distance with terrifying speed. Isabella grabbed his arm. "Come on, we need to be ready to fight." They quickly armed themselves with swords and pistols, knowing that a battle was inevitable. The wind whipped through their hair, and rain began to pour, soaking them to the bone. The dark ship of Captain Black loomed closer, its ghostly crew standing eerily still on deck, eyes glowing with anticipation. Tom swallowed hard, trying to push down the rising fear. "Do we really stand a chance against them?" Isabella shot him a confident look. "We've made it this far, haven't we?" The ghost ship finally pulled alongside them, and with a loud creak, a gangplank slammed down onto their deck. The ghost pirates swarmed aboard, weapons drawn, their faces twisted in malicious grins. Captain Black himself stepped forward, his eyes locked on the heart of the sea. "You can't run from me forever," he sneered. "Hand over the heart, and I'll make your deaths quick." Tom raised his sword, standing his ground. "We're not giving you anything." Captain Black's eyes glowed with fury. "Then you've sealed your fate." The battle erupted in chaos. Ghost pirates clashed with the crew, their ghostly weapons somehow solid in the heat of the fight. Tom swung his sword with all his might, parrying blows and dodging attacks. Every strike felt like fighting a shadow. The pirates were fast and difficult to hit. Isabella fought beside him, her movements swift and deadly. She was a master with her blade, slicing through the air with precision, but even she was struggling to fend off the relentless attackers. Amid the chaos, Tom spotted Captain Black moving toward Isabella. His eyes widened in panic. "Isabella, look out!" She turned just in time, raising her sword to block Black's attack. Their blades clashed, sparks flying in the stormy air. "Give up, girl," Black hissed. "You can't win." Isabella gritted her teeth, pushing back with all her strength. "I'll never give up." But Captain Black was stronger than he looked. With a powerful shove, he knocked Isabella to the ground, her sword flying out of reach. He stood over her, his ghostly form flickering in the lightning. "You should have stayed out of this, girl," he snarled, raising his sword for the final blow. Tom's heart pounded in his chest. Without thinking, he charged forward, tackling Black to the ground before the sword could come down on Isabella. "Get away from her!" Tom yelled, wrestling with the captain. Black snarled, his ghostly form shifting and writhing under Tom's grip. "You think you can stop me, boy?" Tom struggled to keep his hold, but Black was like smoke, impossible to pin down. Just as Tom was about to lose his grip, Isabella grabbed the heart of the sea from Tom's pocket and held it high. "Enough!" she shouted. Captain Black froze, his eyes locking onto the glowing gem. "If you want it so badly," Isabella continued, "then come and get it." With that, she threw the heart of the sea into the ocean. Tom's eyes widened in shock. "What are you doing?" Isabella didn't answer. The heart sank quickly into the dark waters, its glow fading as it disappeared beneath the waves. For a moment, everything went still. Then, with a deafening roar, Captain Black and his crew began to dissolve, their ghostly forms disintegrating into mist. Black screamed in fury, reaching out for the heart as he vanished into nothingness. The storm began to calm, the winds dying down, and the seas becoming still once more. Tom and Isabella stood in silence, breathing heavily from the battle. The ghost pirates were gone, the curse broken, and the heart of the sea lost forever. Tom looked at Isabella, his expression a mix of shock and admiration. "You really did it." Isabella smiled, though there was a sadness in her eyes. It had to be done. Before Tom could respond, she stepped closer, wrapping her arms around him. The tension of the fight melted away, and for a moment they simply held each other, the sound of the waves filling the quiet night. "I guess that's the end of the adventure," Tom murmured softly, resting his chin on her head.